I meant more than one.
Nice save.
Well, as you'll probably be able to tell in a few seconds, I'm probably a misfit on this panel because we talked about K through 12 undergraduate education, and my focus is mainly, when I think of education, and it's kind of unfortunate, but when I think of education, I think of higher education. And so the comments I want to make, I think the question to the panel was, how do we transform education? So if we look at where we are today, I think there's an opportunity both for the US and for other developing countries to transform education in rather interesting ways. And mind you, what I'm going to say is only for higher education, and in higher education, mainly graduate education, not even undergraduate, but undergraduate and graduate education both. So I think the way to think about this is to look at where we are today. I think nobody would argue, including in this country, including Jim out here from the Department of Education, that the higher education system in the US is still by far the best in the world. I don't think there will be any argument when it comes to that. You might argue K through 12, you might argue a whole bunch of other things, but not higher education. So the question to ask is, how did we get here? And I think if you look at the history of education in this country, you will realize that we got here mainly by accident rather than by design. And the accident was an unfortunate one. It was World War I, World War II, when this country, to win the war, invested some huge amounts of money in what they call development of weapons, development of defense strategies. It's called research nowadays. But in those days, all of these technologies, all of this investment was aimed at developing, for example, the nuclear bomb. So when World War II ended, there was a fundamental question in place as to what should the country do with all the technology that's been developed, and how should it be transformative for the country. And I think that simple fundamental question led to the creation of what we know of as a Great American Research University. And that research university created a whole lot of opportunities. I mean, most of us sitting in this room came to this country to study in one of the great American research universities for graduate education and find a better way, a better life, better livelihood, and so on and so forth. So that is important to remember. That's what happened. Since then, the country has invested amazing amounts of money. I mean, post 1945 till today, if you look at the amount of wealth this country has generated, a lot of it, not all of it, but most of it has come because of its investment in research in universities. And that slow process of investment year after year after year has transformed the university system, the education system in this country in ways that no other country can immediately overnight take over. Now, why do I say this? Other people in the world have realized that. So now we talk about India, China, you know, the two big population centers in the world, only one of them being a democracy. And they have an interest in replicating this system. But unfortunately, what they're trying to do is saying, oh, you know, so the story goes like the following. You know, the way to become rich is to start a company, because I know Jim out there did that. So the way I'm going to become rich is start a company, and forget the fact that 9 out of 10 companies fail. Jim had the right idea, Jim had the right process, Jim had the right ecosystem, right? And that's one of the mistakes. So if India has to, for example, let's focus on India. India has to think about transforming education. It has to be more than just bring US education to India, which has been the methodology, or at least the strategy up to now. They want to create MOUs, they want to take our courses, they want to go to, for example, one of the things I hear is, oh, you know what? I don't want to work with you to learn anything, because I can go to MIT's website and they have open courseware out there. I can grab a course from them and then I'm good, right? But that would be no different than grabbing a textbook written by MIT, Stanford, CMU professor. So if India has to do it right, I think India has to rethink its strategy in terms of what it means to get a university. Just saying that IITs are the cream of IITians are the cream of the crop, it's a fair statement. It's because of the JEE. It's not because of the institution. So what we have to do is not transform the individual, transform that institution by focusing more on research, by focusing more on higher level goals that are focused on developing technology or technological base in the country. Secondly, this country did really well, is creating policies that actually allow technologies to be moved to the marketplace very easily. A lot of companies, so just the best example I think is Google. Show me one company in the world that is like Google, which was funded at a university, a PhD thesis by the US government, and there's like $150, $200 billion of net worth being created literally in a period of 10 years. There is no such company in the world. I've challenged you to show me one outside the US, and you will have a very difficult time doing that. So policies that enable entrepreneurship, policies that create innovators, policies that enable these innovators, an ecosystem in which they can live, an ecosystem in which these innovators can thrive and grow is an important strategy. So that's one of the things I think India should be focusing on. Now you might say, why is it that the US has an interest in collaborations? Why would I want to go work with an Indian university or Chinese university? So it used to be that, I would try to do that about 10 years ago with purely a colonial frame of mind, i.e., I from the West know better, you guys have no clue, I'm going to teach you. Well, that colonial frame of mind doesn't work anymore, because it turns out there's actually a sincere and serious need for us to work with India, China, Brazil. If you look at where we are headed in this country, the biggest demand is going to be for products, services, everything is going to be in these countries. If we don't understand how to produce products, processes, technologies for these countries, many companies or companies in this country would be out of business very fast. Right? And the only way to understand that is to work with students, to put teams together. Teams, well, 4 students, like 2 from India, 2 from the US, working together on a $50 prosthetic device. Another team from Brazil working on how can biofuels be used, how can fuels be created from biological waste, and so on and so forth. That is the reason I think we should be focusing on working collaboratively with developing nations, because I think it's in our interest to do this. And he says 2 minutes. And last but not the least, let me tell you, one of the challenges in this country, people talk about it, is access. Access to education was literally, even today, people believe it's their fundamental right, even though access is becoming more and more difficult. If you look at the cost of education, there are 2 sectors in this country, education and healthcare. If you just figure how they're growing at the rate at which they are growing, in about 10 more years, there'll be more than 25% of this GDP, which does not make sense. This would be a distorted GDP if education and healthcare are 25 or 30%. So the way to fix that is to literally have a scalable type of system which provides access at nearly 0 cost, right? So technologies that CK12 are developing, technologies like the Open Learning Initiative, are going to be very, very significant in scaling education and providing access, solving 2 big problems in one shot, right? So, and I think this is where universities, Jim talked about Ben Franklin, was it Jim? Ben Franklin would recognize only one thing, that's a university, which is truth. I think this is the time when we look at research and development in what we are doing, our understanding of psychology, neurobiology, cognitive science has grown so much in the last 2 decades that this is the time to bring it all to bear and impact one big thing, and I believe that is education in a very big way. So thank you very much.
Thank you.